And now it's my great pleasure to bring up Sharon Closius, who herds us all together and keeps us in line and makes us work that hard. Sharon has been VCF's president and CEO since 2013. Prior to VCF, Sharon spent 20 years at the Fairfield County Community Foundation. Now in her 10th year at VCF, she's overseeing continued growth in both the number of funds established each year, now more than 200, twice as much than we had prior to her arrival, and more than doubling the total of manageable assets. Now it's $36 million, as I mentioned earlier. Her skill as Chief Executive Officer and her ability to lead and get results is without question exemplary. I'd like to hear you tell us a little bit more about your new hobby too when you're speaking. She's becoming an accomplished athlete, something you may not know much about. But ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium VCF's President and CEO, Sharon Closius.
Okay, I think that's a challenge for a pickleball, but I'm going to decline on that one because if you don't know, I went out to learn how to play pickleball. I was out there for a grand total of 10 minutes. I backed up, I fell, and I broke my leg. Actually, I broke my right there in the hip socket. So that was just 2 months ago, so I'm up and walking again, but I don't think I'm doing pickleball. But thank you, Jack. Thank you all, and thank you so much for all that you do for our community foundation. As Will so wonderfully put, you just have done everything as far as the Valley is concerned, and we really have you as our board leader and doing so much for us. And a special thanks for Eugene. I told Eugene when he sat down, I got a feeling you're going to have other speaking engagements. I think people are going to call you and say, come on, we need to hear more from you. And Will, I'm so glad, I don't know where Will is, but I'm so glad Will was able to be here and again confirm the wonderful relationship that we have with TCF. So, and I'm so glad that all of you are here tonight and that we are actually seeing, as David Morgan said, in 3D instead of 2D. That's really so nice to see. We've had quite a bit going on in these last few years, haven't we? I mean, we've faced all challenges and sadness. Seriously, when we think about what we've all been through in these last few years, it's been really, really difficult, and more difficult for some of us than others. And I really want to just say to those of you in this room that have lost loved ones over the course of the last 2-3 years, our prayers, our thoughts, our sympathy goes out to you. This has been a really, really rough time. But this reception, our first in-person reception in 3 years, is really going to be a celebration. It's a celebration of community and life in the Valley. The obstacles we all faced in the last 3 years were, and still are, significant. But equally significant is how, as a community, we responded. In 2020, the first year of the pandemic, we reflected on how resilient we were as a community, if you recall our annual report. How resilient we are. We had to be resilient, right? No one knew what was going to happen. No one knew what was coming. But we persevered and forged on. You persevered. When we look back on 2021, we know there were pivots. Letting go of certain ways of doing things and learning how to do things differently. But what we also know is that we stayed the course. It's a steady trail blazed from that resilience and perseverance. We at the Valley Community Foundation have stayed the course. But what is that course? For the past 2+ years, despite the unpredictability around us, Many nonprofit organizations and people in our valley continued day in and day out doing their jobs. Teachers taught our children, men and women in public safety and healthcare stayed on the front lines to keep us safe. Businesses, large and small, sacrificed much to stay open and provide food, supplies, and services without knowing what the future would bring. VCF stayed the course because you stayed the course. About 9 years ago, we started using the tagline, "For good, forever, for the Valley." And in 2021, we're using it again to describe what we mean by staying the course. As Jack mentioned, last year we awarded nearly $2 million in grants. There were grants that helped the home delivery food for the elderly and the homebound, that they couldn't leave their homes during the lockdown. There were unrestricted grants that helped area nonprofits with their operating costs, and even grants that helped residents get their vaccinations. We focused on learning and understanding what the challenges and the changes are in the Valley and how we can now best respond. So when we think of for good for the Valley, we want to make sure we used our resources wisely and our Valley nonprofits can be there for the people that they serve. Now, when we think about forever, we think about the fund holders, those of you in this room, those that have established permanent funds that will benefit the Valley in perpetuity. In a few minutes, I have the pleasure of introducing the 16 new funds established at VCF last year. 16. That is a new one-year record, I'll tell you. So despite the crisis swirling around all of us, the Valley community stepped up in a significant way to help others in a more permanent way. The 16 new funds join the other 216 funds as tangible evidence of the generosity and the spirit deeply woven into this region. These permanent funds were invaluable and instrumental in allowing VCF to help area nonprofits and Valley organizations get through the tough times like we've had these past few years. So we had 10 new Gate Society members. They are individuals who have made a gift to VCF, usually in their estate plan. These gifts will go into permanent funds and are an investment in our Valley's future. So for good, forever, and now for the Valley. One of the great things about working at VCF is hearing how the Valley residents want to have a positive effect and are dedicated to our community, whether they are here or not, and even whether they're alive or not. The Valley is like a member of their family. They want to help make the Valley a better place to live and work, both now and in the future. Former residents, long removed from our area, living all over the country, and indeed the world, always call the Valley home. Some keep those roots tethered to the Valley no matter where they are, and some establish funds to honor family members or their family name, securing a Valley legacy. In 2021, we had several funds established by family members who are not in the Valley. These new funds are connected to extraordinary people from diverse backgrounds and all have something in common. They all have a deep, abiding love for the close-knit Valley community, its long history, traditions, and pride. That's why for good, forever, and for the Valley, we stay the course. Thank you so much. And on your way out tonight, you're going to see our annual report. It's a beautiful annual report, and I thank Dave Rivera, who started with us, and he came right in to take care of everything. And it's a and I thank him so much, and you'll see this beautiful annual report, which is for good forever for the Valley, staying the course. So thank you. Now tonight I'm going to talk about the new funds and the people that established them. But unlike in years past, and because we have so many wonderful new funds this year, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I will briefly summarize each fund and recognize the great people here tonight that established them. Beth and David and maybe Val, we have our Vannas ready to go, will bring a special gift to each of the funders. And please applaud when they receive their gift, but respectfully, let's save the big applause until after all the funds have been recognized. We don't want to be here all night. As I mentioned already, and I really like saying it again and again, we have 16 new funds that were established in 2021. 5 of those funds were donor-advised funds. For those of you who might not know, a donor-advised fund is one of the easiest ways to support nonprofits and causes dear to you in the Valley and elsewhere. It offers maximum flexibility because the donor has retained the right to advise on or recommend on the grants from the fund to any public charity basically in the country. People can add to it and make grant recommendations at any time.